Hi, my name is James Caballero. I'm a Navy veteran with experience in healthcare operations and healthcare management. Currently, I'm finishing up a capstone with Savvy Coders that involves data analytics plus Python. For me, my personal professional life right now, I'm kind of pivoting into learning a little bit more about data and data analysts or data analytics and the tools involved in working in that environment as a business analyst myself. That being said, for the capstone, I'm gonna go ahead and set the agenda up. I'll be going over my capstone. First of all, what question did I investigate as far as the data itself, and I wanted to do my capstone project on the agile and the scrum methods and agile methods that I used during my course and my capstone itself. Also, after that, we'll go into the wrangling and cleaning of the data and the tools involved with that, such as pandas and Python. And then I'll get to data presentation, right? What did the results of the data provide us? What can we take away from that moving forward? And lastly, I'll wrap up with the conclusion of the course and the capstone and tell you a little bit about my next steps. All right, that being said, the question I wanted to research had to do with the National Football League, specifically the spending to the NFL salary cap impact winning. I like the NFL. It's one of my few joys in life, and so with the growth exponentially of data and all kinds of data just across the NFL itself, this is one of the projects that I knew I would be invested in, and really kind of curious to see what the data provided to us as far as doing the project. With that being said, we'll get into that agile section of the presentation. And right here, I have my Jira Capture, which Jira is a software tool we used to capture our projects and specifically to use Agile Scrum framework. So in this one here, you can see that I developed the epics along with the supporting sprints that I would use weekly during our class and or my capstone as well. Uh, and during that, I served as the Scrum Master, a product owner, and a developer. We had a very small team, but it allowed me to have experience in being in those particular roles as we ran through the the Agile Scrum framework itself. So what we did is we built out our capstone planner, our homework planners as far as sprints going. Then we did the associated grooming on a weekly basis when we went from one week to the next to make sure that if there are any issues, we pull those sprints that weren't closed out forward so we can continue to work on them and then close them out as well. As far as our daily stand-ups or our scrum meetings, we would discuss, what we accomplished the day before, what we're currently working on today, and then address or bring up any hurdles that may be preventing us from closing out the sprints that we're currently working on. So it's a great process overall. I do have some background at the Agile and Scrum, but it's great to use the Jira tool itself, get re-familiar with it or reacquainted with it, and then use that within our team environment itself. All right, next we'll get into data and the data I was able to get together. So I have a list here of some of the websites that I utilized as far as getting or retrieving the data I was looking for. Spotrac being one of them, which actually had, I think, the best layout for it. However, this was behind a paywall, so I did not get to use API or web scraping or download an Excel. I basically had to do a cut and paste of all this data from these different sites to get the data I needed. Basically, I needed the year, all 32 NFL teams, what their salary cap was for those years, and the team's winning percentage as well. Obviously, I did look at the Super Bowl winners, the conference championship winners, and all 32 teams in general as well, which we'll get to in the next steps here. But that was my biggest hurdle in actually trying to get the data I needed to find, whether it was behind a paywall or just going into these specific websites and building these basically Excel spreadsheets myself to get the data I needed to look at. That was really my biggest hurdle in finding the data. I was able to go back from year 2011 to 2023 for the data. As far as data wrangling goes, this is a snapshot of my Jupyter notebook for data I use for data wrangling. I use VS Code to work in. I created this Jupyter notebook, and then I use Python as my kernel to actually write the code to do a little bit more discovery into the data itself. Now, because I didn't import or export an Excel file from the website. I created them myself. Some of the columns that I knew I wouldn't be needing to utilize in the analysis, it was pretty easy just to kind of delete those, right? But after I did that, I imported the file here into my Jupyter notebook to use Python itself, so I could do further investigation itself. First step I did was I imported pandas as PD. And then in this example, I used 3 data frames. So this is an example of my 3rd data frame that I built, right? So I wrote the code in to read this particular CSV, which has to do Super Bowl winners results. The next step, I was like that, hey, what were the last 12 columns? So I used the function of df3.tail. So I look at the last 12 columns in there, see what made up the data source itself, get kind of an idea of what was sitting in there. The next function I used was looking for any duplicates. So I used the df.3 duplicated function or code here to find out if there are any duplicates. And then if there were any, then I get use additional code to delete them out. So we only had 101s in there as far as that goes, which I didn't. There were no duplicates. But the biggest thing I did here is from a coding perspective, after going in and looking at the data and then cleaning it, was replacing NFL teams. So from 2011, 2023, there are a few teams that switched their team names because they either switched cities or they switched it to some other reasoning that they had going on. So in this example, you see I use the replace method or the replace function within my code to replace team names. In this example, in the first one, it's replace Washington football team with Washington Commanders. And that went so on and so forth for the San Diego Chargers to the Los Angeles Chargers, Oakland Raiders to Las Vegas Raiders. And so that was my use of pandas and Python as far as writing code to investigate and clean my data itself, getting it ready and prepared to use in our visualization tool, which was Tableau, which I'll move into next. So this is one of 4 charts for the results of the data itself. And I'll go ahead and set this up for you so we're all on the same page and it's easy to understand. So in our legend here, we have available cap space, which is the blue bar, and then our winning percentage, which is the orange line. The graph itself, we have the team on the left-hand side, also slotted with the available cap space to spend. And then on the right-hand side, we have the winning percentages, right? And on the bottom, we have our years from 2010 to 2024. So what does this really data tell us? Well, if we look at it, we can see, as in the Denver Bronco example here, that in 2011, the winning percentage for that year was 50% for the Denver Broncos. And they still had $125 million remaining of salary cap space to spend. And so what we do is we trend this out over time. As the winning percentage goes up, we see that they have less cap space to spend because they're actually utilizing that budget to redo contracts and get players, right? And I think in the effort in this for being a winning football team is you want to get better as a team overall, and that's where you use your salary cap space in are better players to improve your team overall, which hopefully translates into more wins. So as we see over time, as the win percentage increases or even drops, you see a association with a similar relationship with almost exhausting all of your salary cap numbers, which intends to have a higher winning percentage, to where you're not exhausting the available salary cap you have with a drop in wins as well. And you can see this especially on the other teams we have in here as far as Super Bowl winners goes, right? So the more space you have, or the more cap you haven't expended, the less higher your winning percentage, right? And then you trend it over time as you spin down to 0 or even negative in some instances, your actually winning percentage overall for the season is higher. Now I did this 2 more times because I want to look at not just the Super Bowl winners, obviously looked at it all at 32 NFL teams over time, and we'll get to that last chart here in a minute, but I want to look at the conference champ winners as well. And so we have the AFC winners here, and you can see that we have only 5 teams here. And this tells us that we have, in this example, the Kansas City Chiefs, we have same conference winners, win over that same time frame more than once. And as you can see, the data correlates as far as salary cap to spending or exhausting your salary cap leads to a greater win percentage. Now, additional takeaway from this is you have Kansas City Chiefs who won it more than one time. What are they doing as an organization to win it more than one time to get yourself to that Super Bowl itself? Uh, in contrast to NFC, where you have actually 8 winners over that same frame, and you look at the data as well, and it kind of holds up as far as correlation from exhausting your salary cap space to your winning percentage as well. Um, and so the only difference between AFC and NFC we see, at least a takeaway that I think we can take away, is like, we have multiple repeat winners in the AFC. What is that organization doing from a salary cap perspective that you might want to mirror as well to make yourself a better winner, to give you the opportunity, your best chance to increase your winning percentages? So the last chart I'll get to here is our scatter plot. And this is where we have all 32 NFL teams plotted on this graph. On our left-hand side, we have our available cap space starting at 0, and as it goes up, it increases, right? Which means that's how much money you have to exhaust in your salary cap over that time frame. And then on the bottom, we have or the x-axis, we have our winning percentage. So it starts at 0, moving to the right, it increases over time. And so this is for the entire 2011 to 2023 time period. And so as you can see, as the increase or the drop in salary cap space available happens, you see a correlated or a moderate correlation with the increase and trending to the right of winning percentages as well. Now, obviously, these aren't a very strict correlation or very strong correlation, because that would have all the teams fall, or all the dots here right on the line. But you can see this moderate correlation here because everything's kind of jam-packed in the same general area and all trending in the same direction, right? You have an outlier here of the Cleveland Browns overall, but other than that, it does show that moderate correlation. So that is our big takeaway, or the results from doing this capstone itself, which brings me to my conclusion. During this project, I gathered my data from numerous sources, multiple websites, which probably was the biggest struggle for me because there's not one place to get it from. So I didn't get to use any of the advanced tools such as web scraping or API that would have liked to done. But in the end, I was able to cobble together the data from different websites, create those spreadsheets, right? Once I created those spreadsheets, I was able to import them or ingest them into Jupyter notebooks and use Python to write code. Obviously, I use pandas with that as well. And then once I cleaned and sorted my data and got it validated, I got it ready to use or display in a visualization tool, which is Tableau. So it was great to work with Tableau itself. I am familiar with it from my previous experience, but it's nice to get there and actually learn how to do it yourself. And so I can build that knowledge base up for myself as I move forward in my career. And so the biggest takeaway, or the ultimate overall results of this capstone, was that yes, there is a moderate correlation between NFL winning percentage by teams over time and the use of their salary cap space, right? The more salary cap that they use, as they exhausted it down to 0, the resulting or corresponding increase in their winning percentage over time, right? And so that's the conclusion of the big key takeaways from this capstone itself, which I find interesting. So what's next? What's for me? Well, obviously continue the next iteration of this might look like, okay, you were able to do this initial pass. What do you want to look at next? Well, for me, I would like to look at salary cap from salary cap management perspective, in how, hey, we have this rookie wage scale coming here from the NFL draft. How does that impact the building of the roster? And in turn, how does that impact the winning percentage from a salary cap perspective as well? If you have lower cost players coming in, but they're great players, that gives you flexibility to, invest a larger part of your salary cap in other positional players. Also, I would like to see the allocation between dollars spent on defense versus offense. These are just some of the iterations I can look at going forward that I'm going to keep myself interested with as I continue to build up my skill set within these tools. And so career-wise going forward, I hope to land a role, or looking for roles within business analysts or business intelligence. And I can't wait for that to happen because I really enjoy working with data. Savvy Coders itself, I would highly recommend out there, especially for the veteran community. They understand where we're coming from They have a great instruction team, a great support staff, and they want to see success, or excuse me, succeed in life. And they definitely will give you the tools in here in this 12-week course to be able to do that. Now for me, on to the next steps is getting to the next iteration and securing a position and working with my new skill sets. Thank you. Thank you for your time.